Title: I heard breathing under my bed every night at 2 a.m. Part 1. The breathing begins. It started on a Thursday. At first, it was subtle, like the hiss of a breeze, barely there, but just loud enough to pull me from the edge of sleep. My clock blinked. 2 a.m. I remember frowning in the dark, my mind foggy from exhaustion, brushing it off as maybe the air vent rattling again. But we didn't have vents. The room was dead silent. Too silent, except for the faintest, rhythmic sound that seemed to be coming from just beneath my bed. Breathing. In and out. Labored. Slow. I froze, eyes wide open in the dark. I held my own breath, trying to isolate the sound. For a moment, I thought it might just be my imagination. But then it came again, clearer this time. A low rasp of air dragging through invisible lungs. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply stayed frozen, locked in place, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. The sound continued for what felt like hours, but could have only been minutes. Then just as suddenly it stopped, and I was left in the kind of silence that rings in your ears. By morning, sunlight made it feel ridiculous. I blamed a bad dream. I even laughed about it over coffee. But I left my bedroom door open that night, just in case. You know, as a grown-up version of turning the light on. But the next night, it came again. Always at 2 a.m. Never earlier, never later. The same ragged breathing, deep and slow, like something sleeping under there, or waiting. This time, I leaned over the side of the bed and whispered, "Hello?" My voice cracked from fear. No reply, just a breathing, steady, unnerving. I forced myself to sit up, grab my phone, and turn on the flashlight. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Swallowing panic, I shined the beam under the bed. Nothing, just dust and my old sneakers. No eyes, no shadow, no explanation. But the moment I turned off the flashlight, the breathing returned. Closer now. That night, I slept in the living room. The next morning, I called my best friend, Nate. He was the kind of guy who didn't scare easily. Ex-military, a skeptic about anything remotely supernatural. When I told him what was happening, he laughed at first. "You sure you weren't just dreaming?" "I wasn't asleep, Nate. I snapped. It happens at exactly 2 a.m. every night." He offered to come over and crash in my room for a night. "We'll catch your midnight breather red-handed." That night, we both stayed up playing cards and drinking too much soda. I wasn't sure what I expected. I hoped nothing would happen, really. That maybe Nate being there would keep whatever was away. But 2 a.m. came anyway. We were still talking when Nate suddenly froze, his expression going pale. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. We both fell silent. There it was, breathing. Nate leaned forward, eyes locked on the floor beside the bed. "Is someone under there?" he asked, louder now. I shrugged, heart in my throat. "You tell me." He grabbed his phone and crouched slowly, like a soldier approaching an enemy. His light cut through the dark and revealed nothing, just carpet and shadows. But the breathing didn't stop. Nate stood up, rattled. "That's not possible." "I swear to God, man, there's nothing there, but I can hear it." We both ended up in the living room that night. Backs pressed the wall, the bedroom door firmly shut. He didn't laugh anymore. The next day, I called a priest. Father McLean was older, graying at the temples, with the kind of calm voice that made you want to believe everything would be okay. He agreed to come over that evening. He walked through the house slowly, murmuring soft prayers, sprinkling holy water in every room. When he reached the bedroom, he paused at the doorway. "You sleep in here?" I nodded. He didn't move for a long time. Finally, he entered and walked slowly around the bed. He stopped on my side, crouched down, and whispered a prayer under his breath. I couldn't hear all of it, but one word stuck out, "unclean." He stood up quickly. "There's a presence," he said. "It's not strong, not yet, but it's anchoring itself here. Your bed, maybe a focal point." I laughed nervously. "So what? You think my mattress is haunted?" He didn't laugh. "I want you to sleep in another room tonight," he said firmly. "I'll leave you a vial of blessed oil. Rub it on the bedposts, all four corners. and keep a crucifix nearby. I did exactly as he said. That night, I slept on the couch again, clutching the crucifix like it was a life raft. I didn't hear the breathing. For the first time in 3 nights, it was quiet, but the silence didn't last. The next evening, I returned to my room, confident the worst had passed. I even turned on some music, left the lights on, and settled into bed with a book. When I glanced at the clock, it was 1:58 a.m. My chest tightened. I tried to ignore it, keep reading. But at 2 a.m. sharp, the breathing began again, this time louder, angrier. It sounded almost like growling. I leapt out of bed and backed into the corner. The crucifix was still on my nightstand, but I didn't dare reach for it. The breathing turned into a rasping whisper, like someone was dragging nails over wet cement. Get out? My knees gave out. I hit the floor hard, hands over my ears, heart thundering. Then it stopped, just like that. The silence was deafening. I didn't move for hours. When the sun rose, I crawled out of the room and didn't look back. Nate came back that morning. He took one look at me, pale, trembling, eyes bloodshot, and didn't even ask. "We're staying at my place tonight," he said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it would follow me. I was right. That night at his place, I barely slept. And at 2 a.m. sharp, I heard it. Not under the bed this time. From inside the closet, that same ragged breathing. I burst out of the room, screaming. Nate was already awake, a bat in his hands. He flung open the closet door. Empty, but the smell, like rotting earth, lingered. Nate finally believed me. "This isn't just your house, man. This thing is attached to you." We called a paranormal investigator the next day. Her name was Lila, and she didn't smile once. She came armed with all the gear, EMF detectors, thermal cameras, EVP recorders. She walked through my house like a detective at a crime scene. "It's centered on you," she said simply. "Something latched onto your energy. The bed is just a doorway now. It can follow you anywhere." She set up equipment in my room that night. Nate and I watched on her laptop as a thermal cam recorded my bedroom. At 2 a.m., something flickered on the screen. A shape crawling out from under the bed. It had no eyes, just a mouth, stretched wide and a grin too big for its face. Its limbs were too long, its fingers too sharp. It turned toward the camera. The screen went black. I couldn't breathe. Lila shut the laptop. "You need more than a priest." I didn't ask what she meant. I was too scared to know. Part 2, Shadows that Whisper. Lila didn't stay the night. After what we saw on the thermal footage, she packed up her gear in silence and left with a promise to return the next day with someone she trusted, someone who deals with attachments. That was the word she used. Attachment. Like this thing was a parasite, and I was a host. Nate insisted I sleep at his place again, but I knew it wouldn't matter. It had already found me once. Still, the thought of being alone in that house, especially in that room, was unbearable. So I went with him, even though I knew deep down it would make no difference. We set up his guest room with every light on. Nate even laid salt along the door and windows, based on something he found in an online forum. I didn't know if it would help, but I appreciated the gesture. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, watching the clock tick toward 2 a.m. My heart counted down with it. 1:57, 1:58, 1:59. Then it hit. The lights in the room flickered. The air grew cold, so suddenly I could see my breath fog in the air. The walls creaked, not from wind or settling, but like they were being pushed from inside. The closet door shuddered and then slowly creaked open an inch. And then the breathing began. Not underneath me this time. From the ceiling. My eyes snapped up, and I swear, just for a moment, I saw something up there. A shape curled in the corner like a spider, limbs bent the wrong way, head tilted as if watching me. I couldn't move, couldn't blink, could barely think. The thing released a low moan, guttural and angry. Then it dropped, right onto the bed. I screamed, flailing off the mattress and slamming into the nightstand. Nate burst in with a flashlight, shining it everywhere. Nothing. The lights were back to normal. The closet was shut again. No one was there, but the bed was ice cold. And there, right in the center of the mattress, was a handprint burned into the sheets. Nate didn't question me anymore. We waited until morning and met Lila at a diner outside town. She was already sitting in a booth with another woman, tall and thin, with long black hair tied in a braid and eyes that didn't blink enough. Her name was Mira. Lila introduced her as a psychic and spiritual medium. Mira barely nodded at us before speaking. "You've let it in," she said. "It's not haunting your house. It's haunting you." "What the hell does that mean?" I asked. Try not to sound as desperate as I felt. Mira fixed me with those sharp, unblinking eyes. It was dormant. It needed attention, recognition. You gave it that when you responded, when you spoke to it. Now it's awake, and it won't stop until it's fed. I swallowed hard. "Fed? It wants fear," she said simply. "Terror. It drinks it. The more afraid you are, the stronger it gets." Lila pulled out her phone and showed Mira the thermal footage. Mira only glanced at it before shaking her head. "It's not just a spirit. It's something else. An entity maybe older than the house. It used the bed as a doorway because it's the perfect place, vulnerable, intimate. It chose you because you heard it. Most people don't. Can you get rid of it?" Nate asked. Mira didn't answer right away. She tapped the table once, twice, thinking, "We'll try, but you have to be involved. It chose you, so only you can sever the link." That night, we returned to my house. Mira brought strange items, candles, chalk, stones, and a book bound in cracked black leather. Lila cleared the room, while Mira drew symbols on the floor and walls. The windows were covered with black cloth, and salt was poured in thick lines around the bed. I was told to lie on the mattress. "I'll keep you grounded," Mira said, placing a stone in each of my hands. "Whatever happens, don't move. No matter what you see or hear, don't leave the circle. Not until I say." I lay down. The lights were off. Only the candles lit the room, their flames flickering too fast. My breath caught in my throat as the minutes crawled by. Mira knelt at the edge of the circle and began to chant in a language I didn't recognize. The air grew heavy, thick like soup. The temperature dropped, and then the breathing returned. At first, it was faint, familiar, but then it changed. It was louder, almost desperate, inhaling like it had been drowning and just surfaced for air. The mattress beneath me shuddered. A shape rose from beneath the bed. I couldn't look away. Something began to emerge, not walk, not crawl, but seep out like oil through fabric. The air grew rancid, filled with the scent of rot and mildew. Mira chanted louder, faster. The symbols around the circle glowed faintly. The entity reached the edge of the salt and stopped. Its face hovered above me, inches from mine. It didn't look like anything human. Its eyes were holes, endless and howling. Its grin stretched too far, split open like cracked leather. It opened its mouth wider, and I heard my own voice. "I see you," it whispered. "You belong to me now." I screamed. The stones fell from my hands. My body seized up, paralyzed by ice and fear. I saw the candles flicker and then vanish. Darkness swallowed the room. And the breathing, it was inside me now. I don't remember much after that. Just the sensation of falling, then silence, then waking up on the floor. The sun was up. Mira and Lila were gone. Nate was shaking me, his eyes wide with panic. "You stopped breathing. You just stopped." I sat up, my whole body trembling. I looked at the bed. No more symbols. No salt. Just torn sheets and claw marks gouged into the wooden frame. Later that day, Lila texted me a single message. It's still attached. For the next few nights, I tried staying awake. I didn't even go near my room. I slept on the couch, in the bathroom once, even in my car. It didn't matter. At 2 a.m., I'd hear it again. The breathing. And sometimes, other things. A whisper of my name from beneath the floorboards. A hand brushing against my ankle. The feeling of eyes on the back of my neck. I moved out of the house. I stayed with Nate for a while, then a hotel, then another friend's place. But everywhere I went, it followed. It didn't need the bed anymore. It had me. Mira sent me a voice message one night. "It will start to mimic you. Use your memories. Don't trust what you see. Don't listen to what it says. If it offers you anything, don't answer. I didn't know what she meant until the night I saw my mother. She died 5 years ago, but there she was, sitting on the edge of the bed in the hotel room. She looked exactly the same, warm, gentle smile, soft voice. "You look so tired, sweetheart," she said. "You need to rest. Just come lie down. I'll stay with you. I promise." I almost did, but something in her eyes, something was wrong. The smile was too still, her voice too perfect. I turned away, closed my eyes, plugged my ears. When I opened them, she was gone, and the breathing had returned. This time it was angry. I started seeing things in mirrors, glimpses of a dark figure watching from just behind me. My reflection would sometimes move a second too late. One time, it smiled when I didn't. I was unraveling. But giving up wasn't an option. If this thing fed on fear, then maybe starving it would weaken it. Maybe I had to try. Part 3. Starving the dark. I stopped reacting. The night after seeing my mother's imitation, I sat alone in a dim motel room and made a decision. If it needed my fear, I would give it nothing. No screams, no tears, no running. Let it breathe beneath me. Let it whisper. I would not flinch. But it knew. That night, I felt again at exactly 2 a.m. No surprise there. The air turned icy, and the walls of the motel room started creaking with that familiar, unnatural groan. The bathroom light flickered and then blew out entirely, plunging the room into a gray, candleless darkness. I sat still, eyes open, silent. It came anyway. The mattress dipped beneath me, an invisible weight settling at my feet. It crawled slowly upward, inch by inch, with agonizing patience. I could feel the press of fingers on my skin, the scrape of invisible nails against the fabric of my pants. Still, I didn't move. It leaned closer. I felt its breath again, hot and cold at once, a paradox of decay and frost. Then it whispered, "He's already dead." I blinked. He never woke up after you screamed. It murmured in my own voice, "You left him in that house to die." It meant Nate. I still didn't move, but my heart cracked in my chest like thin glass. I didn't want to believe it, but the thought rooted in my brain like a weed. Had I checked on him before I ran out? Had I even looked? "You're alone now," it hissed, "and it's your fault." It laughed then, low and scratchy like wet sandpaper on bone. It slid off the bed, disappearing into the dark. Still, I didn't move. The sun rose. Slowly. Eventually. And I called Nate the second it did. He answered. Groggy but alive. The thing had lied. Of course it had. That was its new game, doubt. It couldn't feed on my screams anymore, so it went from my mind. And worse, it was starting earlier. The next night, the sound began at 1:58 a.m. The creaking, the breathing, the low murmur of voices I couldn't quite understand. By 1:55, the following night, then 1:45, it was getting stronger, even without my fear. Mira reached out again, this time with urgency. She said we needed to act fast, that she'd found someone who could help. A man named Solomon who had studied dark attachments like mine for decades. She called him a cleanser, though not in the religious sense. We met him in a small-town library 2 hours away. Solomon looked like he had aged in dog years, wrinkles upon wrinkles, eyes like dull silver, and fingers that twitched even when resting. He asked me to tell him everything, from the first breath under my bed to the vision of my mother. When I finished, he sat quietly for nearly a minute before speaking. "This entity is ancient," he said. "It doesn't exist in our timeline. It's older than memory. It slips through cracks, dreams, thoughts, weak moments. Beds are soft doors. Our minds open when we sleep. That's when it crawls in. Can I kill it?" I asked, knowing how ridiculous it sounded. "No," he replied simply, "but you can trap it." He handed me a journal, worn leather, pages yellowed and torn in places. Inside were handwritten notes, diagrams, and symbols that made my head throb just to look at them. "We'll perform a containment ritual," Solomon said. "It's dangerous. You'll need to lure it fully into this world. into your space. Once it's here, fully manifested, we can try to bind it. How do I lure it? You already have. It's closer than it's ever been. The ritual was scheduled for the next full moon, just 3 nights away. Until then, I was to remain isolated. No distractions, no interactions. The entity needed to focus only on me. Each night was worse than the last. On the first night, it pulled me under. Not figuratively, literally. I woke up on the floor, mattress overturned, bruises on my chest where invisible hands had pressed down. The second night, it spoke to me as everyone I'd ever lost. My father, an ex, even a childhood pet. Their voices wept from under the bed, pleading, begging. I didn't move. The third night, it showed me something I wish I could forget. I opened my eyes at 2 a.m. and saw myself standing across the room. Me, but not. It wore my face, but its eyes were pitch black. It smiled too wide. Its arms were too long, and began to crawl across the floor on all fours, just like the first shadow I saw on Lila's thermal camera. I didn't scream, but I cried. It reached the bed and pressed its face against the mattress, nose to fabric, breathing. It mimicked the sound I'd heard every night, amplifying it. Then it whispered, "You're almost ready." That morning, I called Mira. "We do the ritual tonight." I told her, "I don't care if the moon is full or not." She agreed. We set up in an abandoned house on the edge of town, a place no one would disturb us. The floorboards were cleared, salt poured in a spiraling pattern, and candles placed at specific points from Solomon's notes. At the center was the bed, the same one from my house, transported there by Nate and Mira while I was kept away. Everything led back to that bed. Solomon placed a circle of black stones around it. "Lie down," he instructed. "Of course," I muttered, just like always. "We'll be here," Mira said. "Whatever happens, don't leave the bed. Don't speak to it. Don't believe it." I climbed in, heart pounding. The ritual began. Chants in a language I didn't recognize echoed through the room. The air shifted, heavier, hotter, and then, right on time, breathing from underneath, from above, from inside the mattress itself. The bed began to shake. I gripped the sheets, stayed silent. It rose through the springs, like a shadow being born in reverse. A hand broke through first, then a shoulder, a head. It was me again, a perfect hollow mimic. It smiled and crawled forward, hovering above me. "You've been such a good host," it said, "but I'm ready to live now." It pressed its hands against my chest. Cold, so cold, I couldn't breathe. "Don't engage," Mira shouted from somewhere outside the circle. "Almost there." The creature leaned in, its face now twisted, the skin cracking open to reveal raw, writhing black beneath. "I'll wear your skin. I'll sleep in your life." The candles flared. The creature screamed. The floor split open. Light poured from beneath the bed, pulling the shadow into it. Solomon chanted louder, voice booming like thunder. And then everything stopped. The candles went out. The air cleared. The silence was clean. I opened my eyes. I was alone. The others entered the room slowly. Mira helped me sit up. "It's contained," Solomon whispered. But I noticed the way his hands trembled. For now, I wanted to believe it was over. But that night, back at Nate's house, I sat on the couch just before 2 a.m., and for the first time in weeks, I heard nothing. No breathing. No whispers. No shadows. Only silence. Still, I didn't sleep, because silence can be the loudest warning of all. Part 4. The silence wasn't empty. The silence lasted 3 nights. I counted each one like borrowed time. No breathing. No shadows. No whispers. I even tested it, laying flat on the bed in Nate's guest room at exactly 2 a.m., eyes wide open, waiting. Nothing came. But silence has a weight when you've lived with something that breathed beneath your bed every night. On the 4th night, I dreamed for the first time in weeks. It was a room made of mirrors. Infinite versions of me stood facing each other, all staring blankly, their reflections bleeding into the walls. One of them moved when I didn't. Just one. It walked toward me, hands dripping with something black. "Your skin is empty now," it said. "I need to come back." I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. Nate ran into the room and said he'd heard a thud. I had fallen out of bed. At 2 a.m., that dream should have been the first sign. The second came the next morning, when Mira called, panic in her voice. "Solomon's dead." I couldn't process it. I asked her to repeat herself. He was found in the house where we did the ritual. The bed was flipped, the salt pattern broken. No wounds. But, she paused, his face looked like he'd been screaming for days. I didn't answer her, because in that moment I heard it again, breathing, but not from beneath the bed. This time, it came from inside the closet. That night, I stayed downstairs. I didn't dare enter the bedroom. I laid on the couch, lights on, TV playing static, because I couldn't bring myself to watch anything. At 2 a.m., the power went out. The room fell into total darkness, and the breathing started again. This time, from behind me, I turned slowly. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, impossibly black. I couldn't see the end of it, even though I knew it wasn't more than 10 feet. Then I saw a light flicker on at the far end, the guest bedroom light. It pulsed once, twice, then went out. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, Nate told me he'd had a nightmare about being dragged under a bed that wasn't his. He described the same claws, the same voice. It was spreading. Mira was already on her way over when I told her. She came armed with a journal Solomon gave me, now missing several pages. Ripped out, maybe during the struggle. We went back to the abandoned house. We had to, but when we entered, the bed was gone. Not destroyed, not burned, just gone. That's when Mira told me something she'd kept from me. "There's an old story," she said, "about a cursed bed that moves from place to place. People think it's haunted, but it's not. It's a doorway. The entity uses it to enter homes, lives, minds. What happens when the bed disappears?" I asked, "It finds someone new." We were quiet for a long time. Then she showed me the final entry in Solomon's notes. It said, "If the silence lasts longer than 3 nights, it means the entity has shed its skin. It's no longer tied to the bed," she explained. "It's tied to you." I didn't say anything, because I already knew. That night, I set up cameras all around Nate's house. Motion detectors, infrared lenses, audio recorders. I told Nate to stay with Mira. At 2 a.m., I sat in the center of the living room, alone, the monitor feed open on my laptop. Everything was still, until the camera in the hallway glitched. It skipped a frame, then another, and suddenly, there was a shadow at the end of the hall. No body, just a silhouette. It didn't move, but the breathing began again. This time, not from the hallway, from inside my ears, like it was in my head. I clutched my skull, pressure building behind my eyes. The room pulsed, every object blurring and warping. The laptop fell, the cameras died, and then complete darkness. I don't know how long I sat like that, but when I opened my eyes, I was back in the mirror room. Only this time, the other versions of me were gone. Just the one, still dripping black fluid, stood in front of me. It smiled and said, "You brought me in. You opened the door. Now you live with the consequences." I lunged at it, screaming, and woke up, still on the floor, but my hands were covered in something. Not blood, with shavings. And when I looked behind me, the couch had deep claw marks, for long grooves, like something had been dragged out from under it. That night, I burned the couch, but I knew it wouldn't be enough, because it wasn't about furniture anymore. It was in me. In every room I entered, I felt it watching. When I walked by mirrors, I saw my face lagging a second behind. When I blinked, I heard the breathing restart. I wasn't alone in my body anymore. And worst of all, I wasn't sure I wanted it to leave, because something in me had started to miss it. The fear, the tension, the shadow. Life without it felt too quiet, too hollow. And the silence, it was never empty. It was just waiting. Part 5, the thing that wore my voice. I stopped talking for a week. At first, it was a conscious decision to keep the thing inside me from using my words. Then it just became easier. I communicated with Mira and Nate through texts, glances, nods. It felt safer. It felt like silence was the only way to stay in control, until it started speaking anyway. They didn't believe me at first. Not really. Not until Nate caught me standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., staring at him through the open door of his bedroom. He said I looked empty, like I was hollowed out, and when I spoke, my voice was calm, polite, unfamiliar. I said, "Don't worry, I'm only here for your shadow." Then I blinked and woke up on the floor of the bathroom, vomit in the sink, blood under my nails. The cameras caught none of it. Mira didn't hesitate after that. She brought holy water, salt, sage, every method she could find online or from Solomon's half-burned journal. We tried cleansing the space, my body, my clothes. We tried praying. We tried screaming at it to leave. Nothing worked, because by then it had learned how to mimic me perfectly. It wore my face. It used my laugh. And worst of all, it called Mira my voice, whispering her name from the other room, luring her in, tricking her into isolation. One night, she followed the voice into the basement. Thinking it was me, the lights flickered as she descended. I heard her scream just once. When I reached her, the door had shut behind her. I pulled it open, expecting the worst, but she stood at the center of the basement, unharmed, smiling with tears in her eyes. "It said it could make it stop," she whispered. "It offered me peace." That night, she refused to leave the basement. Said it was quieter there. Said the breathing had stopped. I knew better. The entity wasn't haunting anymore. It was negotiating. I should have left then. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed. I watched. I waited. And each night, it came closer to the surface. It didn't need to hide under bed anymore, or in the closet, or even inside walls. It was walking freely, in plain sight, using my legs. I'd lose hours, entire evenings, waking up to find texts I never sent. Footage of me standing at the foot of Nate's bed. Recordings of me whispering stories to an empty room at 2 a.m. One video stood out. It showed me sitting cross-legged on the bed, whispering the same phrase over and over. "I made room. I made room. I made room." My eyes were black. My mouth didn't move with the words. That's when Nate left for good. He packed a single bag and told me not to follow. "Whatever that thing is," he said, "it wants more than just you now." He wasn't wrong. The breathing wasn't just at night anymore. I'd hear it when I walked into a store, when I rode the bus, when I stared too long at reflective surfaces. Mira stopped speaking to me. She wouldn't say why, until she left me a note on my door. "You're the doorway now." And I knew exactly what she meant. That night, I barricaded myself in the room, bolted the windows, nailed the closet shut. I even pulled the bed apart and slept on the floor. I needed one night, just one, where nothing moved. At 2 a.m., I heard scratching, not from under me, not from the walls, from inside my mouth, like fingers brushing the roof of my throat. I ran to the mirror and opened wide, and I saw it, a shadow moving behind my teeth. That was the first time I screamed without sound. Since then, the voice has only grown bolder. It answers the phone when I don't. It hums lullabies I've never learned. And last night, it said something new. It said, "Soon, you'll breathe me in." I've stopped trying to fight. I record everything now, not for proof, but for the next person. Because this isn't about one haunted bed or one cursed soul. It's a chain, and I think I'm just another link. Tonight, it's almost 2 a.m. again, and I can feel it rising through my lungs like smoke. If I stop breathing, maybe it won't take full control. But if I do stop, will I still be me? Or just another empty body it wears like skin? I'm writing this now while I still know who I am. But if someone finds this, and they hear my voice coming from someone else, please don't believe it's me. Even if it sounds like me. Especially if it sounds like me. Because I don't breathe alone anymore. Part 6. Scratches in Silence. I woke up with blood under my fingernails again. The sheets were torn, shredded like claws had raked through them. My hands ached, palms raw and blistered. I couldn't remember anything after 1:53 a.m., just flashes, a low hum vibrating in my ears. A hand, not mine, gently brushing my forehead. Then black. The mirror told me the rest. Thin scratches zigzagged across my throat, like someone had tried to open me up, but stopped halfway. My eyes were sunken, bruised. My lips were pale. I looked like someone who drowned in silence. It was no longer just happening at 2 a.m. The thing was spreading out, like ink bleeding through a page, taking more time, more space, more of me. I tried calling Mira. Her number had been disconnected. Nate was gone. I'd searched the last address he gave me. It was empty, abandoned, a single mattress on the floor, and a dusty old alarm clock stuck at exactly 2 o'clock. They had both disappeared. And I was next. That night, I turned off every light, sat in the middle of the living room. No cameras, no mirrors, just the dark. I told myself I wouldn't move, that I'd stay awake, that I'd catch it. At 1:58, I heard the breathing, not from under me, not beside me, inside me. It was like my lungs were double, each breath echoed by another set of lungs hidden deeper in my chest. Slower, heavier, out of sync. I screamed, but it sounded distant, like my voice was being funneled through a tunnel miles long. Hollow. That's when I felt the first pull. Not physical. Something inside tried to invert, like I was a glove, and it wanted to wear me inside out. I clawed at my skin, desperate to stay in, to hold the shape of myself. My fingernails cut into my thighs, my arms, my cheeks. But it wasn't pain that made me stop. It was the whisper. It came from my own mouth. You're making it worse. Then silence, the kind that made your ears ring. And then just breathing. Calm, even, steady. I don't know how long I sat like that. Eventually, I woke up on the ceiling. Not metaphorically. Literally. I was lying flat against the ceiling above my bed, looking down at the empty mattress below. Gravity didn't seem to care. Neither did my sense of direction. It was like the world had turned upside down, and my body hadn't gotten the memo. When I finally dropped, no warning, just slam, I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. Because I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel it with me at all times now, watching through my eyes, licking its teeth every time I blinked. I kept hearing laughter that didn't belong to me. It would burst out my chest like a hiccup. Quick, sharp, bitter. It wasn't mine, but it used my throat. I stopped sleeping, but that didn't help. Because now, even when I'm awake, the dreams creep in. I started seeing her, the girl under the bed. Only now, she wasn't crawling out anymore. She was standing over me. Her hair hung like wet ropes. Her skin was pale and twitching, like her body was still catching up to the thing inside her. Her mouth opened, wider than any human mouth should. She didn't speak. She breathed, and her breath smelled like my childhood bedroom, like dust and mold and something dead. She leaned close and placed a finger on my lips. And in my voice, she said, "You're ready now." The next day, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a VHS tape, and a note that said, "For when you forget what you are." I don't own a VHS player, but when I touched the tape, I saw things. Not memories. Instructions. It showed me how to let the thing in fully, how to make room, how to open the final door inside myself. I tried to throw it away, but the tape reappeared the next morning. On my pillow, I didn't touch it again, but I could still hear it spinning. Even now, at night, my reflection no longer follows my movements. Sometimes it smiles when I don't, or mouths words I haven't said yet. Other times it looks scared, and I think maybe I'm the one on the other side now, and the thing has taken the body. I've started locking every door behind me, triple-checking windows, removing mirrors, but none of it matters, because it's not trying to enter anymore. It's already inside, and it's waiting for something. Something I haven't given yet. Maybe it's my name. Maybe it's my memories. Or maybe it's just waiting for me to admit that I like the silence now. that I like not being alone in my own head, that the breathing, while terrifying, is also comforting, because at least it means I'm not empty. Not yet. Part 7. The thing that wears my face. I try not to look in the mirror anymore, but sometimes I still caught glimpses. When I did, I saw her. At first, it was subtle. A twitch at the corner of the mouth. A delay in the blink. But now it's unmistakable. The reflection moves on its own. Sometimes it watches me sleep, smiling, patient. She doesn't pretend anymore. She wears my face better than I ever did. It was just past midnight when I heard the floorboards creak, coming from the hallway. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. I hadn't left the door open. I was sure of it. I never left it open anymore. But it was wide open. The hallway beyond was pitch black, like the shadows had swallowed the light. I couldn't even see the opposite wall. Then I heard it. The same sound every night, like breath caught in the throat, raspy, wet, steady. But this time it was closer. It wasn't coming from under the bed. It was coming from the hallway. I called out, "Who's there?" No answer, only the breathing, growing louder, sharper, and then the sound of footsteps, bare feet slapping against wood. I slammed the door shut and pushed the dresser in front of it. The breathing didn't stop. It started whispering my name again, over and over. But this time, the voice was mine. I backed into the corner, trembling. And then came the knock. Not on the door, on the window. Second floor. There, behind the glass, stood me, smiling. But her eyes were all wrong. Too wide, too black. She didn't blink. She just pressed her hand against the glass and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then, slowly, she opened her mouth, wider and wider, until her jaw cracked sideways, stretching down to her collarbone. The glass fogged up from her breath, and then she vanished. I didn't sleep that night. When the sun finally rose, I found muddy footprints leading from the window to the foot of my bed. But the window was still locked. That day, I went to a priest. I didn't tell him everything. I knew how that would sound. But I asked if he'd ever encountered something that wore people. He looked at me like he knew exactly what I meant. He brought me into the back, lit a candle, and asked me to look at the flame. If it flickers, he said, you're still human. If it dies... He didn't finish. I stared at the flame. It didn't flicker. It went out. He didn't say a word, just stood slowly and left the room. I waited, hoping he'd return. He didn't. When I came back to the main chapel, he was gone, and his car was still in the lot. That night, I tried burning the VHS tape. It screamed, not out loud, in my head, a high-pitched wail that pierced straight through my thoughts. I dropped the tape in the sink and ran cold water over it. The screaming stopped, but something else began. Memories that weren't mine started bleeding into my brain. A bedroom painted blue, a stuffed bear missing an eye, a lullaby I'd never heard but somehow knew all the words to, and the name, Clara, that was her name, the girl under the bed. She wasn't a ghost. She was a memory given shape, a forgotten child sealed in silence. So long she started to rot from the inside, and the rot grew hungry. She wasn't haunting me. She was becoming me, or maybe I was becoming her. I didn't go to work anymore. I barely ate. The world outside felt thinner every day, like plastic wrapped stretched tight and ready to tear. People on the street would glance at me and quickly look away. Children cried when I passed. Dogs growled from across the block. Whatever was in me, whatever I was becoming, it wasn't hiding anymore. It wore me like a mask, and the seams were starting to show. I saw Nate again. At least, I thought it was him. He was sitting at the park bench across from my building, just staring up at my window. I ran outside. But when I got close, I saw the rot. His eyes were hollow, his skin gray. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I leaned in, and he mouthed one word, "Run." Then he crumbled, like ash, gone before he hit the ground. Now I keep every light on. I sleep with the TV blaring static, hoping the noise will keep her away. But it doesn't. She likes the noise now. She sits beside me and hums along with the static. The same lullaby, the same broken rhythm. I tried recording myself again, just audio this time. In the playback, I heard the breathing, then footsteps, then my voice singing. But I wasn't singing. I was crying. I don't know what's worse, knowing the thing inside me is growing stronger, or realizing I'm starting to like the way it feels, like coming home. There's something comforting in not being alone in your own mind anymore, in letting go of the fear, letting it have you, because once you give in, the breathing becomes yours. And tonight, for the first time, I plan to breathe back. Part 8, the breathing spreads. I woke up to the sound of scratching, not from under the bed this time. It was coming from inside the walls, the kind of dry, desperate scraping that claws through your spine, like fingernails digging through plaster and bone. My room, once my only refuge, had become a nest of whispers and sounds that shouldn't exist. I didn't move. I just listened, and I realized something terrifying. There wasn't just one thing anymore. There were many. At 2 a.m. exactly, the breathing began. First on the bed, then in the closet, then behind the headboard. It wasn't a single breath. It was a chorus, a slow, inhuman harmony filling the room like thick smoke. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The breathing was inside me now. I saw movement in the corner of the room. Not her, but them, shapes barely visible, shifting just outside the edge of light. I stared hard, hoping I was wrong, but as the shadows rippled, I could see the truth. They all wore my face, different versions, different emotions, one sobbing, one smiling, one screaming silently, one just staring, lips sealed tight and wide eyes unblinking. They circled me, never moving closer, just watching, waiting. I fell asleep at some point, though I don't know how, and when I woke up, there were bruises on my arms, finger-shaped, too many to count. I tried calling my mom again. This time, she answered, but it wasn't her voice. It was mine. It said, "Stop calling. She's already here." And then the line went dead. I smashed my phone. It didn't matter anymore. The thing inside me was reaching beyond me now. It wasn't just haunting. It was infecting. I went outside for the first time in days. The sun burned too bright, like it knew what I'd become. People turned when I passed, not because they recognized me, but because they felt me. The breathing followed. A woman in a floral dress stopped me on the sidewalk. Her eyes glazed over, and she whispered, "They're watching you." Before I could ask anything, she walked straight into traffic. No scream, no hesitation. Just gone. The car swerved. People shouted. But no one looked at me. I went to the old library on Maple, the one no one visits anymore. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe answers, maybe history. I found a dusty box of microfilm labeled Evictions and Incidents, 1996. I don't remember ever visiting this place as a child, but something about the year pulled me. One report stood out. A little girl named Clara, 7 years old, vanished from her home on my street. They found blood under her bed. No forced entry. Parents vanished the next day. The house was boarded up, condemned. The address? My building, my apartment. She never left. She never could. She'd been breathing for nearly 30 years, waiting for someone to listen, someone to open the door, someone to share the body with. Back at home, I stood in front of the mirror. I didn't recognize myself anymore. My skin looked like it was pulling too tight. My eyes were too dark, my smile too soft. I looked like a photo of me that had been copied too many times. Behind me, the bed shifted. I turned quickly. No one there. I got on my knees and looked under. Nothing. But the moment I stood back up, I saw her reflection standing right behind me in the mirror. I didn't scream. I just nodded. She was tired of hiding. And so was I. That night, I recorded the breathing. Not for proof, but for memory. I wanted to know when the last time was that I felt alone. The tape crackled. Breathing. Laughter. Then silence. A voice, mine, whispered, "Let me in." I don't remember saying that, but I remember meaning it. I started to sleep better after that. But the dreams, they changed. I wasn't being chased anymore. I was the one chasing, running through unfamiliar homes, under beds, into closets, standing silently at footboards, whispering names. Always at 2 a.m., I woke with dirt under my fingernails, scratches on my wrists, a faint taste of blood on my tongue. The next day, I saw a missing persons report on my doorstep. A girl named Ellie, 7 years old, vanished from her bedroom, just like Clara, just like before. And I knew the breathing had spread. She was no longer alone. And neither was I. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror one last time. There were two of us now, standing together, smiling, breathing in sync. Two hearts, one face. She was never under the bed. She was inside the moment between breaths. And now, she was everywhere. Part 9. The shadows take form. The days blurred into nights, and the nights bled into something else entirely. Something darker, thicker, almost alive. The breathing wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence, an entity wrapping itself around every corner of my existence. I stopped trying to fight it. Instead, I listened. It taught me how to hear the silence between the breaths, how to watch the spaces where shadows gathered but didn't belong. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the room grew cold, unnaturally cold. I could see my breath miss in the air, though the heater was on full blast. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, but the shadows had already started moving. They slipped from corners like ink spilled across the walls. I was no longer alone. Figures formed from darkness, tall, thin, with elongated limbs and hollow eyes that gleamed faintly red. They moved without sound, except for the breath. Deep, wet, and slow, like the last gasp of something dying. I realized with a chill that they were drawn to me, not to harm, but to welcome. The breathing crescendoed into a low chant, a wordless that filled the room. It wrapped around my chest, squeezing tightly but not painfully, like a lover's embrace. Then the thing with my face appeared again. But this time it was different. She reached out her hand. I hesitated. I felt the weight of everything. The lost children, the vanished families, the empty rooms, and the quiet screams. Her fingers brushed mine. The coldness spread like ice through my veins. Suddenly, I was somewhere else. A dimly lit room with peeling wallpaper. A bed with a worn, threadbare blanket. A child's drawing taped crookedly to the wall. I recognized it immediately. It was Clara's room. I could feel her presence, tiny but fierce. She was waiting, not to scare me, to be heard, to be saved. But then the shadows shifted, closing in like a tide. The breathing grew frantic. I screamed, but no sound came out. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my bedroom, alone. Or so I thought. There was a note on the floor, written in shaky, childish handwriting. Thank you for listening. But the breathing never stopped. It only changed. Now it was quieter, patient, waiting. And I knew it was only the beginning. Part 10. The whispers beneath the floorboards. After that night, the air in my apartment felt heavier, thick with secrets pressing just beneath the surface. The breathing had softened, almost respectful, but the silence it left behind screamed louder than ever. I was haunted not only by the sounds, but by the shadows in my mind, creeping steadily closer. One evening, unable to sleep, I crawled out of bed and moved toward the corner where the breathing first began. The floorboards creaked softly under my feet, a sound so familiar, now it was like a heartbeat. I knelt down and pressed my ear to the wood. A whisper, faint, almost like a sigh. It wasn't coming from under the bed. It was beneath the floor itself. I grabbed a screwdriver and pried up the loose board. Below, a hollow cavity. Inside, a small wooden box sealed with rusted nails. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, a collection of brittle letters, yellow with age, tied together with a faded red ribbon. I opened the top letter. The handwriting was shaky but desperate. To whoever finds this, please forgive me. I tried to protect her, but the darkness grew too strong. She listens to the breathing now. It's inside her, and inside all of us. My heart pounded. Who was her? And who was she? I sifted through the letters, each one a fragmented confession of fear, love, and surrender. The last letter was different. It was addressed to me, written in the same childish hand as the note I found before. I'm sorry I scared you. I never wanted to hurt anyone, but the shadows need a home. Will you let me stay? Suddenly, the breathing returned, soft, almost pleading, underneath the floorboards. Waiting. I closed the box and replaced the floorboard, but I knew this was no longer just a haunting. It was an invitation, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to accept. Part 11, The Night Visitor. The moment I closed the floorboard, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the lone candle flickering on my desk. Darkness swallowed the corners, thickening like ink in water. I shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of something unseen settling around me. That night, as I lay awake in bed, the breathing began again, slow and steady beneath me. But this time was joined by a new sound, soft footsteps barely audible, pacing the floor near my bed. I dared not move. The footsteps circled, slow and deliberate, as if someone was walking in place, just out of sight. Then a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. Let me in. My breath caught. I wanted to shout, to run, but my body felt heavy, glued to the mattress. The air grew colder still, and the darkness seemed to pulse with life. Suddenly, I felt a weight on the edge of the bed. I turned my head slowly. A small, shadowy figure crouched there, barely more than a silhouette, but unmistakably a child. Its eyes glowed faintly red, reflecting the dim moonlight seeping through the curtains. It raised a trembling hand and pointed under the bed. Frozen, I looked. Nothing. Then it whispered again, "She's waiting." Before I could ask who, the figure vanished, leaving only the lingering chill and the faintest trace of sorrow in the air. I pulled the covers tight around me, heart hammering. The breathing continued, and I knew whatever was under my bed wasn't just a presence anymore. It was a visitor, one who wouldn't leave until I answered the questions I was too afraid to ask. Part 12, Beneath the Silence. Morning never came the way it used to. The light that filtered through the curtain seemed dimmer, as though the sun itself was hesitant to touch my home. The clock on my wall had stopped ticking at exactly 2 a.m. No matter how many times I replaced the battery, it refused to move past that cursed hour. The breathing had evolved into something stranger. It now came in short, irregular bursts, followed by silence so deep it rang in my ears. I stopped leaving the apartment. Every time I tried, the air outside turned suffocating. I felt a pull in my chest dragging me back to the room, to the floorboards, to the shadows waiting just beneath them. I spent hours sitting by the bed listening. And then I heard something new. Voices. Muffled, like a conversation taking place behind thick walls or underwater. At first, I couldn't make out the words. Then, slowly, they grew clearer. She's almost ready. Not yet. She must choose. I pressed my ear harder against the wood, holding my breath. She's listening. She always listens. Let her remember. Remember what? That word echoed through me like a thunderclap. I stood, went to the closet, and pulled out the old box of my childhood things. A photo album, an old toy rabbit, a necklace shaped like a tiny heart. Then, tucked between the pages of a forgotten storybook, I found something that didn't belong. A photograph, faded, blurry, but unmistakably in my childhood bedroom, my old room, the one in the house I hadn't seen since I was 7. In the picture, I was sitting on the bed, smiling, and under the bed, just barely visible, was a hand, thin, pale, reaching out. I dropped the photo in horror. Suddenly, memories flooded back, disjointed and nightmarish. The whispers, the games I played with a girl no one else could see, the times I told my parents someone was under the bed and they laughed, thinking it was a game. Her name had been Clara, and she hadn't just vanished. She'd been taken, and I had forgotten her. The shadows weren't haunting me. They were waiting for me to remember, to return. And now that I had, the voices beneath the floor whispered again, "She's ready." The breathing paused. Then a single word echoed through the walls. "Come." And I knew tonight I'd have to make a choice. Stay above the floorboards or descend into the silence below. Part 13. Into the hollow. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the bed, the floorboards before me clear of everything. Rug, dust, fear. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. ticked by in frozen silence. And then, as always, 2 a.m. arrived. Right on cue, the breathing began. But it was different now. Louder, rhythmic, like someone was inhaling and exhaling with me. It wasn't just beneath the bed anymore. It was beneath everything. I pulled out the box again, the one with the letters, the ribbons, the warnings. They felt warmer than before, as if the past inside them was still alive. My hands moved on their own. I pried up the floorboard again, slowly, carefully. Below was a cavity. But this time, it wasn't just empty space. The wood had rotted away into a tunnel. A hole, impossibly deep and lined with blackened soil, stretched downward into the darkness. The edges pulsed, faintly breathing with that same cursed rhythm. I leaned over it and heard her voice. "Please, I'm still here." Clara. Her voice was faint, tangled with years of abandonment, layered in grief and betrayal. But it was her. Without thinking, I reached into the hole, and something touched back. Fingers, cold and brittle, clasped around my wrist, not with malice, but with desperation. Then I was pulled downward. The room disappeared in an instant. My vision went black. I fell or floated. I couldn't tell. The air around me whispered 100 forgotten names. Children lost in time. Laughter turned to screams. I landed softly. A room stretched before me, identical to mine, but wrong. The walls bled shadows. The corners shimmered, and every surface seemed to breathe slowly. In the middle sat Clara. She hadn't aged. Still the same little girl I remembered, except her eyes were hollowed, glassy, her mouth stitched shut with thin threads of hair. She reached out to me. I stepped forward. Behind her, others emerged. Dozens of children, all silent, all watching. Then the shadows around the room slithered forward and whispered in one voice, "One must stay." The room trembled. Clara pointed upward. They were offering me a choice. Free Clara and take her place, or turn back and leave her in the hollow forever. I looked into her eyes, and I remembered the promises we made, the games we played. The moment I forgot her, I reached for the thread across her lips, and slowly I began to pull. Part 14, the exchange. The thread resisted at first, like it had rooted itself deep into her skin, fused by years of silence and sorrow. Clara didn't flinch. She just stared at me, pleading with those lifeless, glassy eyes. I pulled gently. One stitch gave way, then another. Each unraveling thread made the shadows hiss and recoil, as if I were tearing open a wound they'd carefully sealed. By the time the last strand came free, Clara gasped, a dry, hollow sound that echoed like wind through a crypt. Tears poured down her cheeks. She didn't speak right away. Her mouth trembled as if relearning how to move. Her voice, when it came, was raw, like stone scraped against stone. "You came back." I nodded, though guilt clogged my throat. The others, the children trapped here, stepped closer, their expressions unreadable. Were they angry? Hopeful? Hungry? Clara took my hand. "You have to go now, before they change their mind. Not without you." She shook her head. "Only one can leave. That's the rule. It's always been the rule." The shadows writhed around us. The floor cracked like thin ice. The walls pulsed. Clara whispered, "They need a voice, a storyteller, someone who remembers." I looked around. The room had no doors, no windows, only the hole above, faintly glowing, pulsing like a heartbeat. Clara turned to the others and said something in a language I didn't recognize. The children bowed their heads. Even the shadows stilled. Then something changed. I felt the pull shift. It was no longer dragging me down, but pushing me up. Clara smiled softly. Tell him I was real. Before I could protest, her hand released mine. The shadows surged around her like a wave, swallowing her in one breath. And I was ejected. I shot upward to the tunnel of roots and dust and echoes, back into my room, slamming onto the floor with a gasp. The floorboards snapped shut behind me. Silence. The clock ticked again. 2:01 a.m. My room was back. My world real. But I knew I wasn't the same. I crawled into bed, eyes wide, listening. No breathing. No whispers. Just silence. And then my phone vibrated. One new photo in my gallery. I opened it, hands trembling. It was Clara, smiling, standing in my bedroom. And behind her, the rest of them, the ones who never left. My chest tightened because I realized the truth. I hadn't escaped the hollow. I'd brought it with me. Part 15, The Hollow Within. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw them. Their pale faces, hollow eyes, the faint curve of Clara's smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. By morning, the photo was gone from my phone. So was the clock on the wall. Just gone. No trace. No nail, no mark. As if it had never existed. But the changes didn't stop there. The apartment fell off. Time moved strangely. My reflection lingered a moment too long in mirrors. The floor creaked, even when no one walked on it. I heard faint laughter in the vents, like children playing far, far away. Or very, very close. And worst of all, I wasn't alone anymore. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., I would wake up, not to breathing, but to the soft rustling sound of tiny footsteps beneath the floor. Not running, just pacing, waiting. The tunnel was gone. I checked every board, every wall, but the presence had remained. Clara had remained. One night, I tried to call someone, anyone. My voice on the phone didn't sound like mine. It was deeper, slower, like it came from somewhere else. That's when I understood. I hadn't brought them out. They had brought me in. The real world no longer existed. Or maybe I had only peeled it back enough to see what lay beneath it. The rot, the memories, the echo of forgotten children who still wander beneath the beds of the living. Each night, I could feel them getting closer. And then one day, I got a letter in the mail. No address, no stamp, just my name. Inside was a single photo. Me, asleep in bed. And under the bed, countless eyes, watching. The note on the back read, "Tell your story, or stay forgotten." So I did. I started writing everything. Every breath, every whisper, every night of terror that led me here. But I know this won't save me, because I was never meant to escape. This was always the deal. Clara is free now, and I'm the voice on the floor. I'm the one breathing under your bed at 2 a.m. Listen closely tonight. You'll hear me. The end of the story. It's quiet now. Too quiet. No more breathing on the bed. Because I'm no longer under it. I'm within it. Inside the wood, the shadows, the seams of the room you think is yours. Clara walks free. Her story forgotten by everyone but me. That's how the hollow works. It doesn't feed on fear. It feeds on memory. On the ones left behind. On the ones we forget. You'll feel it too, soon. That chill at 2 a.m. That moment you swear someone is watching. The shape in the corner that vanishes when you look. Because you read this. Because you know now. And now it knows you. So tonight, when the clock hits 2 a.m., don't listen for breathing. Listen for your own name, whispered softly, from under your bed, because I'm there. And I remember you, just like I remembered Clara. Just like I'll remember the next. The end.